But while, it was a memorable day for, I suppose, the occasion in Cooliroo 24 hours later in Semple Stadium, it was a very memorable day for the result on field as Newcastle West beat Clonmel Commercials in the Munster semi-final to book their final spot against Cairns Rallies. I suppose Newcastle rode their luck a small bit at times, especially towards the end of regulation time. It was into the 8 minutes. There's only 5 added on, but there was delays here and there. There was 2 black cards in that time. There was injuries, etc. And Newcastle were attacking. But like they did against Adair, they worked into scoring position, not necessarily a scoring player. It was Darren Doherty in Kilmallock a few weeks ago, but it was Ruan O'Connor in Semple Stadium, scored the point to bring to extra time. And they didn't look back in extra time. They were thoroughly dominant, scored 1-3 to a point. Overall, looking at the contest as a whole, they were the better team for probably 60-65 minutes, only for a blip just before half time and just towards the end of the game. But Newcastle West are into a Munster senior final, the first Limerick side since Drum in 2008, and 100% deserving of that place in the final.
Absolutely, Jack, 100%. And I was one of the people that believed that they were up against it in Clonmel Commercials, and for the simple reason of they had home advantage. They moved the game from Clonmel to Thurles to Semple Stadium because they saw the possibility of an advantage in that, and of course they had beaten Nemo Rangers. But when you reflect back on it, we never had a doubt, Jack, I think, and we've been saying it here for a good while now in this medium. We never had a doubt about the quality that's in the Newcastle West team and about the potential that is in their team. And reflecting on the game since now, I did not see the game because I was at the Napier Ballina game, which we'll be talking about in a minute. But I look, they brought their A game to Thurles, and I'm just beginning to believe that, and we said this in the context of reviewing the Munster football, the Limerick football final, that we were never going to see the best probably of Newcastle West in games against Adair and Monaghan, because they dug out the results in both of them, and both games, no doubt at all about them, they stood them in good stead on Sunday because they had to work really, really hard to win both of them. But they accord too much respect to each other, and there isn't anybody prepared to take chances or any of that sort of a thing. But I believe that Newcastle West, and I actually said it to Keane Shee, and I met him in Cooliroo on Saturday, that if Newcastle West go forward, they're as good a football team as anyone will see going forward. And we have seen this, and some of their forward movements, and you'd have to say they're sporadic, maybe too sporadic, during the Limerick campaign. Like, they're a joy to watch when they move forward and when they go forward. And particularly, they have the players that can play that type of game.
Yeah, and they're without some of their key forwards as well. They didn't have age at all this year. And obviously, Jamie Lee has been abroad for the last 3 years. He was one of the best footballers.
He has been abroad,
in Limerick when he was here. So,
they're without finishers, a couple of good finishers. So, look, it's a side laden with talent, and we saw during the year, and we've mentioned it here, I think, a couple of times, about fellas like Rowan O'Connor and Emmett Richter, the impact and the way that they have dovetailed so seamlessly into the team. They're giving an extra dimension to the team. All right, you have the hardcore of experience. And Jack, you have a full back line for Newcastle West that this year are playing exceptionally well. And we saw in the Limerick Championship that the first goal that they conceded in 7 games was a minute before halftime in the 7th game. They'd gone almost 6.5 games without conceding a goal. Like we've seen Mike O'Keefe, form of his life, down the heart, in great form at fullback. Brian O'Sullivan has gone very adventurous this year.
He has very.
he's moving forward and supplementing the attack. But that's obviously Jimmy and his management team's plan for him. But the role that he's asked to play, he's doing it very well. Like James, it's centre back, rock solid. Like and what about big Mike McMahon above and we haven't spoken at all about Cian Sheehan and Ian Corbett.
Yeah, I think Cian Sheehan was just men amongst boys kind of stuff below in Semper Stadium. There was a clip, I think TG Carr had it up, and he gets the ball probably in his own 45 and slaloms through him at his ease and off his left end, his supposed weaker foot. He's really taken that form that got him an All-Star nomination into the club championship.
Jack, I would like to ask, I have a bit of advice for TG4. Would they ever show that clip to the All-Star selectors?
Yeah, I just think the fact Limerick didn't reach quarter-final went against Keane in the All-Star selection, but we won't get bogged down on that now. But you're right.
Well,
Newcastle
I'll be Jack. I'll be talking about All-Stars later.
Okay, yeah, I know, but on Cian Sheehan is they've cast it over the field and they're a very balanced side, and I think the likes of Emmett Richter, you mentioned, who got the goal, and Rowan O'Connor and Todd Donovan started as well, have added a lot more balance to that team. They've some great finishers there to come on, and it was a brilliant performance. And Cairns O'Reilly's beat Aerogue Ennis, and they were down 14 for a lot of it, and it was an important man that got sent off. But looking ahead to the final briefly, like Newcastle should hold no fear going in against Cairns O'Reilly's. Last year they were beaten well by Austin Stacks, but they know the level they have to get to now, and they're seem to improving year on year, so they should hold no fear going into that final.
Not only do they know the level they have to get to, but they're getting there, Jack, which is the very important thing. And like this is a very, very special generation of Newcastle West players. We've talked, I suppose, since this medium started about the quality of the squad that Newcastle West have. And it's just simply a phenomenal squad. And Cameron O'Reilly's should hold no fears whatsoever for them. Now, I know Cameron O'Reilly's will have their big names. They'll have Tommy Walsh, and they'll have David Moore, and they'll have the Barry John Keanes of this world.
Yeah.
Clonmel Commercials had 6 players that started in the Munster final of 2020 and beat Cork down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Yeah, you make a good point there. And as well, I think Newcastle West, they ended, it was a 23-year wait for a title in 15. That would have been Ian Corbett and Cian Sheehan and Brian Sullivan and Mike Mack would have been all relatively young at that time, and they weren't used to winning. Whereas now the lads we've mentioned coming up, the likes of Rowan and Todd and Emmett Richter, Dear McKelly, and these boys are so used to winning that it becomes a habit, and that's the worry for other teams in Limerick is, if Newcastle get over the line in the Munster final, when they come back next year going for 3 in a row, they'll have no fear that it's more than capable and they have within them. So it bodes very well for Newcastle. There's no doubt in that. For the other teams watching on, it's a small bit worrying, but it's great for Limerick football, and it's a sign of where Limerick football is going. That the club championships, that they have a team back there. In 08 when Drum were there, Limerick were very strong, and they got the finals in 9 and 10, and a quarter final in 11. So overall, it's a reflection of where Limerick football is at. Segueing into the intermediate championship, Matt, you were at it.
Yeah, but just to take up your point there on where Limerick football is at, gone are the days, and hope they never come back, where the Limerick clubs were always the whipping boys in the first round of the club championships.
Yeah.
This year, all our clubs have all our 3 clubs have won games in the Munster Championship. You must remember that whilst Castlemahan were beaten by Fossa, they had won a first round against Shamrocks. So all three Limerick clubs have tasted success in Munster Club Fair this year. So it bodes very well for the future, and like it mirrors where Limerick football is probably at the moment, on an upward trajectory, and long may it continue.